Hey everybody, we're talking about do-it-yourself, no social security number. And copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating Your Public Servants. I have YouTube videos that are videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for donation. And this last paragraph is for all the Satanist order followers operating in their private capacity under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966, because they can put their privileges and benefits up their rectal orifice. Donations to support this work are appreciated, but I prefer gold or silver coin. But as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the commercial paper, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, I should say, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Anyways, a social security number is a number for a slave. There is no law that says anyone has to get or use a social security number. There is a regulation, but regulations are for government employees only. A social security number is a number for a Satanic trust. No living soul has a social security number. And all of this is coming from the Roman cult. This is Henry Boland's 1912. Every taxpayer is a Satanic trust, having sufficient interest in preventing the abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. A U.S. citizen equals Roman law equals Roman cult. This is chapter 854 of the statutes located at 31 Stat 1432. This is the D.C. Code, an act to establish a code of law for the District of Columbia, chapter 56, section 1617, at 31 Stat 1432. The legal estate to be in the Satanic use. A citizen of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as co-trustee and co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust, the constructive Satanic Trust of U.S. Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and U.S. Inc. And that is a summary of 5 pages of the congressional record dated June 13, 1967. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income taxes. Unless the defendant can establish that he is not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. And that's U.S. versus William Slater. Obviously, he has converted his God-given rights into satanic privileges. A U.S. citizen equals a taxpayer equals a slave. It might be correctly said that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. And this is more D.C. Code. This is which was approved on March 3rd, 1901, 56 Congress, Session 2, and 31 Stat 1189. This is right at the beginning, and a 2 says, be it further enacted that in the interpretation and construction of said code, the following rules shall be observed, namely, the word person shall be held to apply to partnerships and corporations. So this is all for corporate law, is what it is. And this is more D.C. Code. This is section 252, located at 31 Stat 1230. Absence for 7 years, presumption of death. If a person shall leave his domicile without having any known intention of changing the same, and the point being is, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can pause it and read it if you want. But the point being is that this gives them the presumption that you're a Satanic trust, because a Satanic trust is a dead thing. A Satanic trust is a trust for a dead thing. And so that's exactly, this gives them the presumption that you're a Satanic trust. And the Satanic trust comes from the Roman cult. U.S. citizen equals Roman law equals Roman cult. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits while the season of the land remained in nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, that's the Roman cult, to be bound in conscience to account to a sesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the state. That's taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. So, first of all, the sesticate trust was created by the Roman cult. Second of all, they still run the courts even to this day. And taxes, it's talking about taxes in there. And it was the foundation of modern conveyancing in 1835. It's still the foundation of modern conveyancing. And they use it for a lot more than just conveyancing. Remember the legal estate under the DC Code to be the sesticate use, and they can presume under Section 252 right here that you're dead, that you're a sesticate trust right there. So if the Roman cult created the sesticate trust, and if the U.S. citizen is a sesticate trust, then the Roman cult owns the U.S. citizen. If the legal estate in the United States is a sesticate trust, then the Roman cult owns the United States. The Roman cult runs the so-called courts and wants to tax the rents and emoluments of their fraudulently created sesticate trust. That's exactly what goes on. And now a little diversion. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there is a new upload. And there is my my YouTube channel, and notice where the arrow is pointing at the bell. You click that bell after you subscribe, and you will get a pop-up, and it'll say, do you want to be notified? And the answer is yes. Back to the topic at hand. A tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject. An excise or tallage. In public law, taxation signifies a system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes, okay? And some general principles of taxation have found to be the subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible in proportion to their respective abilities. That is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists what is called the equality or inequality of taxation. That's Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell, London. This has been going on from the beginning, okay? The Declaration of Independence even talks about it. He is combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his acts assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. This is all evidence of martial law. All statutes are only for government property. This is a Canadian case. In other words, Dominion legislation, even though it deals with Dominion property, and that's the Unemployment and Social Insurance Act, and that's the Privy Council, so that's in England that's dealing with this, in 1937. Roman statutes equals Roman cult. This is all tied into the Roman cult. And this is the U.S. Court Constitution, Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. So all territories are property of the United States, and then they're talking other property. That's the U.S. citizens. They're the slaves. If you read any antebellum case involving slavery, the debate in the case was always over property rights. Antebellum is prior to the Civil War. Anyways, if you read those cases, the debate in the case is always over property rights. The taxing power, being in its nature unlimited over the subjects within its control, would enable the state governments to destroy the above-mentioned rights. In other words, that's U.S. Supreme Court, Crandall versus Nevada. If they can take a penny, they can take it all. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or permission. And that's McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. The privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. Okay, so a U.S. citizen does not have any rights. This is Maxwell versus Dow, U.S. Supreme Court. The only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. So again, a U.S. citizen does not have any rights. So the key is, you have to understand, is a U.S. citizen has the Social Security number, and how do you operate without it? Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are federal citizens and not state citizens. Federal citizens, as parents, have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. U.S. citizens don't have any rights. Capitis diminutio, they always spell it in all black capital words, so that's what it is capitis diminutio, meaning the diminishing of status through the use of capitalization in Roman law. Okay, this is all coming from the Roman cult. This Roman law. Sestake trust equals Roman cult equals slave. This is all about slavery. Think about it. If they're making you pay taxes, then they're forcing you to work for nothing. Because that's how you pay the taxes, is you work for nothing, you give them the money. Capitis diminutio as a diminishing or abridgment of personality, a loss or curtailment of a man's status or aggregate of legal attributes and qualifications. Capitis diminutio maxima means the loss of status through the use of capitalization. In other words, Hannah with the unknown last name, John or John Doe. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. That's all block capital letters. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage when he became a slave. It swept away with it all rights of citizenship and all family rights. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. And now another little diversion. Announcing a subscription-based YouTube channel called Sovereignty International. The recommended cost of the subscription is currently $1.99 a month because it only avoids the advertising. When I first set up the channel, I was planning on having some exclusive content on there, but after thinking about it, I can't think of anything that I want to have on there exclusively, because the problem is the only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for everyone's benefit. And so I can't think of anything that I want to have on there exclusively that I don't want to have available for free. There is actually an Arlington private information share that's on there exclusively, but that's the extent of it right now. And there will probably be some other exclusive stuff, but the only thing I can guarantee is that there won't be advertising. And so that's why it's only $1.99 a month. I also appreciate donations, so if you want to make it a donation for $1.99 a month and subscribe that way, then that's great. I appreciate it. I'm currently publishing 5 videos a week, and there was people that had trouble finding the channel, and so there's a link there at the bottom of the screen. So you can either subscribe to avoid the advertising, or subscribe to make a donation, or a combination of the both. And so whatever, it's appreciated, and enjoy. There's the front page of the channel. And the top is a link again, and on the side there was people that sent me a donation of $1.99, and I didn't know what that was for, quite frankly. I was thinking that maybe they wanted me to sign them up, and I got to tell you that I don't have any power over who signs up or anything like that. That's all under YouTube's control. If you want to start the free trial, then I'm sure they have payment arrangements they're going to be making and all sorts of stuff. And so that's the only thing I can say. I don't have any control over that. I can see some of the subscribers. I might be able to remove subscribers that I can see, but I don't know. And I certainly can't sign anybody up. I went and contacted those people that sent me the $1.99, suggesting that maybe they want it refunded. I haven't heard anything back, but so I would suggest that that if you want to subscribe, then you can't. Contacting me will not be of any help. You just go ahead and click the Start Free Trial button. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. A U.S. citizen is Roman law, is Roman cult. To take an instant, when a person, sui juris, has given himself an adoption, or a woman has passed under manus, all their property in corporal and corporal, and all that is due to them is acquired by the adopting father or coeptionator, except those things which perish by capitis diminutio, of which kind are usufruct and obligation to services on the part of freedmen contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by statutable action. So again, all statutes are Roman cult, and it's talking about capitis diminutio, and this is taken from the commentaries of Gaius and the Rules of Ulpian, 1874, which was translated. It's a book in the Roman Empire back in 350 AD or something like that, but it's translated in 1874 by these liars. And so the point being is it's talking about persons, it's talking about capitis diminutio, statutes, usufruct. All that stuff is all Roman law. This is the Law of Persons by Joseph R. Long, published 1912. The very first section says classification of persons, the Roman law. Okay, a person is Roman law. A person is Roman law. It's distinguished into three kinds of status. Okay, under Roman law, status is everything. Under common law, status is nothing. And then it goes in section 3, it talks about capitis diminutio. And so, and then another little Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, capitis diminutio is the destruction or the kaput of legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, wipes out the former individual and puts a new one in its place. And between the old and the new individual, there is, legally speaking, nothing in common. One juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of three ways. One, by loss of status libertatis. This is capitis diminutio maxima. Two, by loss of status civitatis, which is capitis diminutio media. And then three, by severance from the agnatic family. And so this is taken from a textbook of the history and system of Roman private law. Okay, and that's cited in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. So, again, this is all coming from the Roman cult. Private law, that's contract law. Slavery is a status under Roman civil law. Capitis diminutio maxima. Rome is a maximum reduction of status. Roman law, the diminution of a person's legal status as a result of being reduced to slavery. Okay, so that's status. That's all slavery. This is all coming from the Roman cult. Status, standing, condition. Compare state. A corporation has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it was created. And that's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889. A corporation is a citizen is a corporation. If they're assaulting you with a Sestake trust, U.S. citizen slave, then you're in the United States. I don't care if you're in Texas or wherever, you're in the United States. You're not in Texas. And this is an act to enact the Uniform Commercial Code for the District of Columbia and other purposes, located at 77 Stat 630, Public Law 88-243. And if you go to section 9.307, paragraph H, it says United States is located in the District of Columbia. Okay, and so with Roman civil law, status is everything. There's no real justice. Justice is for sale, depending on who you are, based on your status. Deals with statutes and corporations. And with common law statuses, nothing, it doesn't matter who you are, everybody's treated the same. This is People versus De La Guerra, California court case, 1870. It is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community which is vested any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States and have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws are derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. Okay, and so again, That's why they rigged elections, okay? Because you have to swear on a penalty of perjury you're a U.S. citizen, and then they just go ahead and rig the election. And now another little diversion, CubeYard.com. For great custom websites, domain names, and hostings, go to CubeYard.com. Use coupon code CY172 for 20% off your first order. CubeYard.com, your source for websites, domain names, and hosting. The term citizen in the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. U.S. citizens can murder their unborn children. This is that Roe v. Wade Supreme Court case. The unborn are not included within the definition of person as used in the 14th Amendment. This is Colgate versus Harvey. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. So, in other words, what they're saying here is prior to the 14th Amendment, a U.S. citizen was derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. After the 14th Amendment, it became paramount and dominant. So it turned citizenship into the opposite of what was originally intended by the Founding Fathers. And that's what the next court case says. The amendment reversed and annulled the original policy of the Constitution. And that's U.S. versus Rhodes. And watch the so-called 14th Amendment is unconstitutional video. It's actually a revision. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Remember, anything that, back to McCullough versus Maryland, this says anything that the government controls, they can do anything they want to with, right? Well, if it's if the U.S. Congress create the U.S. citizen, then they can tax it. They can do whatever they want. The term resident and citizen in the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress, 1873. Therefore, U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. A U.S. citizen, upon leaving the District of Columbia, becomes involved in interstate commerce as a resident, does not have the common law right to travel of a citizen of one of the several states. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country. Being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it, they are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens, they have only certain privileges which law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those who have been given the right of perpetual residence. They are a sort of citizen of a less privileged character and are subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status with the right of perpetual residence given them by the state passes to their children. And that's the Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. And so, again, that's why they always want to know your residence, okay? Because they're basically fabricating evidence. One does not necessarily become a non-resident by absconding or absenting himself from his place of abode, okay? Again, it's all in what you tell them. Think about it. Residence, the fact of being officially present, okay? It's all corporate law. The statutory presence of an incumbent in a benefice. It's all corporate law. The right to trial by jury in civil cases guaranteed by the 7th Amendment and the right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment have been distinctly held not to be privileged and immunities of citizens of the United States guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against the abridgment by the states. And in effect, the same decision was made in respect of a guarantee against prosecution, except by indictment of a grand jury contained in the 5th Amendment, and in respect of the right to be confronted with witnesses contained in the 6th Amendment. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, West versus Louisiana. The technical niceties of the common law are not regarded. A jury does not figure ordinarily in the trial of an admiralty suit. The verdict of the jury merely advisory and may be disregarded by the court. The rules of practice may be altered whenever found to be inconvenient or likely to embarrass the business of the court. Yeah, let's throw these rules out. Let's go and ignore the jury decision. We want to railroad this guy, so let's just go ahead and do it. A court of admiralty acts upon equitable principles. A libel of information does not require all the technical precision of the common law. of an indictment at common law. If the allegations describe the offense, it is all that is necessary. If it is founded upon a statute, it is sufficient that it pursues the words of the law. And so, again, this is all U.S. citizens don't have any rights. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between the citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which the Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's Admiralty Court, a military dictatorship, nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. And this is all international law rule. All state statutes are actually federal statutes. This is located in a book called Jurisdiction Over Federal Areas Within the States, Report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction of Federal Areas Within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction, submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957, and this is taken from page 158 through 165. International law rule adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only the statutory but the common law of a state. State and federal venue discussed. The civil laws effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction are federal laws, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws. That's saying that all state laws are federal laws, actually. And a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to a federal district court. I went and filed a lawsuit in Arizona over property taxes, and the Attorney General removed it into federal court. For the very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails, as being the essence of slavery itself. And that's why they have to dumb down the people so much, so then they don't know that they're enslaved. Okay, that's why they have to take over the education system and dumb down the people. Taxpayer equals forced work for nothing. Okay, if you're a taxpayer, you are forced to work for nothing. And that is slavery. Hello? A U.S. citizen equals Roman cult equals slave. My contact information is not anywhere near over, but I just like to mix this stuff in, get myself off topic, so I chill out a little bit. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email is engineerwin@yahoo. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. I've also got one, Sovereignty International. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group, Sovereignty International, on Facebook is being deleted. It takes a while to ban 17,000 people off your group, and I'm not going to let Facebook profit off of my hard work. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating Your Public Servants. And back to the topic at hand. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as citizens in the several states. So there have always been two classes of citizens. That's U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1. And this is Leviticus 19 and 34. But the stranger that dwelleth among you shall be as one born among you. Thou shalt love him as thyself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. So think about it. Two classes of citizens back then, and that's how they became slaves in Egypt. And so, love ye therefore the strangers, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Deuteronomy 10 and 19. And they still talk about it and use those words in U.S. court cases today. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within this territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, but to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those whose residence is transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they are within his territory and owe a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. And that's U.S. Supreme Court 1873. There's always been two classes of citizens. And now another little diversion. Check out my other videos. Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3. Churchianity series. Bankrupt corporate so-called governments. bar members 1, 2, and 3. Do it yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service or the draft. Martial laws here. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, no sales tax. Do it yourself, traffic stop 1 and 2. Do it yourself, free mail. Do it yourself, kangaroo courts 1 through 9. Strangers have a social security number or social insurance number, and this is Deuteronomy 23, 19 to 20. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury. And the bankster thieves will not loan their so-called money unless you can prove you are a resident. That's a stranger. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to events how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how his creatures and servants at first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and everything else be subordinate to the state. And that's Chisholm versus Georgia, 1793. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, and a state of civilization expects what never was and never will be. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and all idolaters and all liars shall have their part in a lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Okay, this is all coming from the Roman cult. The Roman cult is satanic. All they can do is lie. Everything they do is a lie. So what's the bottom line here? Okay, the bottom line is a social security number is a number for a slave. And there is no law that says anybody has to use or has to get or use a social security number. They may only request a social security number, and it is a felony for them to compel the disclosure of a social security number. If you provide a social security number, you're giving your evidence to them that you are a slave. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They tell you that all the time. So under no circumstances do you ever give out a social security number. It's not your number. And this is Title 42, United States Code, Section 408. In general, whoever discloses, uses, or compels the disclosure of a social security number of any person in violation of the laws of the United States shall be guilty of a felony, or upon conviction thereof shall be fined under Title 18 and imprisoned for not more than 5 years or both. Okay, so look it up. Title 42, United States Code, Section 408. They request all or part of a social security number for things like a driver's license, a passport, to get a compensation for labor, to file a lawsuit with no extortion, which is a filing fee, for bank accounts and for loans with the banksters. Now, and so a social security number is a number for a slave. And this is what the regulations, or this is actually 26 U.S.C. Section 6109, supplying of identifying numbers when required by regulations prescribed by the Secretary, inclusion and returns any person required to furnish number of other persons, any person. And so there's several sections here: furnishing number of another person, and any person required under authority of this title to make a return statement or other document with respect to another person shall request. Doesn't say that you can deny him service. Doesn't say anything. It just says you have to request it. The purposes of this paragraph 1, 2, and 3, the identifying number of an individual or his estate shall include the individual's social security number, account number. Okay, so that's all their only requirement is to request. And this is 26 CFR 31.6109. So if you go back here, 26 USC 6109, the regulations would be found at, you just go to any statute and you go to look at the Code of Federal Regulations, and you put 301 in front of the statute, and you'll find the regulations that are applicable to that statute. And so anyways, it says here requirements to furnish one's own social security number. U.S. persons, every U.S. person who makes under this title a return statement or other document must furnish its own taxpayer identification number as required by the forms and the accompanying instructions. Okay, so its own, okay, that's all fictitious entities. Okay, are you a fictitious entity? Do you want to be a surety for their fraudulently created Cesta K trust? I don't, and so it's not my number. And this, it goes on. The requirement to furnish another's number, every person required under this title must furnish such taxpayer identifying number of other U.S. persons and foreign persons. If the person making the return statement or other document does not know the taxpayer identifying number of the other person, such person must request the other person's number. When the person making the return statement or other document does not know the number of the other person and has complied with the request provision of this paragraph, such person must sign an affidavit on the transmittal document forwarding such returns and statements and other documents to the IRS, so stating. That's their only requirement. They make an affidavit. And actually, what I'm going to suggest is you make your own affidavit and give it to them, and then they'll be covered and they don't have to go to the trouble. And so there's a lot of ways to deal with this, but let's face it, when you're getting a job or something or dealing with these thieves, if you don't do it right, they're going to fire you, or who knows what they'll do. But anyway, so this is what you do, is their only requirement is to request it. That is it. And in the Article 2 of the Geneva Convention, relative 52 actually, to the protection of civilians in a time of war of 1949, if you can show that where you're living is under a military occupation, and just about every place actually can be shown that it's under a military occupation. And it says, no contract, agreement, or regulation shall impair the right of any worker. Okay, so they cannot compel you to fill those things out. Okay, and that's where I would go with it. You're going to have to sue them. But they cannot compel you to fill those things out. And it's under a military occupation. And it says here, in order, all measures aiming at creating unemployment or at restricting the opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited. Okay, and so a Social Security number is a number of a government employee is what it is. Okay, same thing in Canada. Social insurance number is a number of a government employee, and the same thing applies. And just about every country on the planet, if you go back and look into your history, I'll bet you'll be able to find the same kind of stuff. I mean, so again, this all applies. Watch my, I've got one, Alberta and other Canadian states are under a military occupation, my video about that. And then I've also got a video about Texas and other American states are under military occupation. And there's a video about that. And so the point is that they cannot compel you to get or use a Social Security number. A Social Security number is hearsay. Okay? Do you know for a fact? I mean, you got this piece of paper, they sent it to you, but you know for a fact that you got it from them, that it's in a database, that it's correct information? I mean, you don't know. It's all hearsay. Computer entries are hearsay. They now have the date of birth linked to a Social Security number. So a date of birth is hearsay. Do you remember being born? I don't remember that day. The only reason they want a date of birth, think about it, is to make sure you're old enough to enter into a contract. That's the only reason they need a date of birth. And once they get the date of birth, they can put your name and address and date of birth, or at least your name and date of birth together and pull it up. I guarantee you. The only things that they can identify if you refuse, I should say the only things that they can deny if you refuse to provide a Social Security number is welfare and unemployment insurance. Those are the only things. Oh, and loans. I should put that down too. The only things that they can deny if you refuse to provide it is welfare, unemployment insurance, and their so-called loans. And so, in my opinion, do not, under any circumstances, provide a Social Security number. I don't provide one. I don't have one. Okay? That's what I tell them. I don't have one. Okay? And I give them an affidavit to that effect. And I might add that I went to the Supreme Court. I sued the IRS, and I went to the Supreme Court in that lawsuit, and I supplied an affidavit to the Supreme Court in that lawsuit, and it was no problem. Anyways, see the do-it-yourself opening a bank account with no SSN video. See the do-it-yourself how to get compensation for labor video. See the Social Security number as a badge of slavery video. Do not, under any circumstances, give them the date of birth or a Social Security number. Make an affidavit stating you don't have a Social Security number and include the statement that you finished high school in the year of whatever, okay? And that's going to be evidence that that you're old enough to make a contract. This is what, if I was to make one today, this is what I would put. I say, I affirm under penalty of perjury, I do not have a Social Security number. I have never had a Social Security number. I have no firsthand knowledge of a date of birth, but I do remember finishing high school in 1975, so I'm well past the age of majority, and it's a felony for you to subject me to the deprivation of any rights or privileges under color of your code's rules or regulations. And this is Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. Whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom, willfully subjects any inhabitant of any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privilege, immunity, secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than a year or both. And so, the point being is that you got to prove that it's willful, okay? And once you put this in your affidavit and you give them the affidavit, I mean, it's pretty easy to prove that it's willful, okay? Because you gave it to them, and especially when there's witnesses saying that they got it, and I mean, that'll be like really tough for them. Anyway, so you have to build a case against them. Okay, I do not, under any circumstances, give out Social Security numbers. I don't have one. If push comes to shove and they're insisting on it, I'll either do without whatever I was looking to get, and I'll sue them. Okay, that's where it has to go. Okay, I mean, it's, again, do you know who you are? I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope you get something out of it. And spread the word. Circulate my video far and wide. Share the knowledge with other people so that I cannot fight all the battles. Okay, there's way too many. That's the reason I'm spreading the word. Okay, because there's way too many for me to fight by myself, and I want other people to be fighting the battles, and we're gonna get good government as a result. That's the reason that the reason that they have so much power over us is because of our own ignorance, and because they've been dumbing the people down. And so let's educate people and change what's going on. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.